I'm John Travis in Mullumbimby, New South Wales on the 24th of January, 2020. And I have the pleasure of reconnecting with Wendy Wetzel and I forgot to ask specifically, where in Arizona?
I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona, up in the
Flagstaff.
mountains. Yep.
How can I forget that? I love that museum in Flagstaff. I remember going there
Yes.
back in '68 and wow.
It's still wonderful.
Where it's January 23rd still. And we had conversations back, I'm thinking in the 90s, and it must have been by phone. It was before we were doing email, but I can't remember how we got connected. It had to do with AHNA because was a new member of the medical version
Most
of
likely.
it.
Most likely. I was involved in AHNA from about 87. I'm still a member, but I was very active for the first maybe 20 years of my membership. And so it was probably at one of the conferences or the Bay Area people, because we had a really active network there.
I just remember you were fun to talk to, and
I hope that hasn't changed.
Yeah, it was like when I thought I did Norm Shealy, maybe we talked about this 10 years ago and never really got anything going, and I interviewed him 3-4 months ago, and we started talking about AHMA and his disappointment that it didn't go the way he wanted to go. In fact, I think there was some upset right at the beginning. And then I read, AHNA, and your name came up, but I couldn't remember. It was funny. I couldn't remember where you were. And then I remembered the connection with Dodo Edwards. So I called her son,
funny.
Roger.
I haven't thought about Dodo and Brownie for years. Yeah.
She was the mother of a classmate of mine in little old Bluffton, Ohio. And he died, but his older brother was still there. So I called the older brother who I hadn't talked to in 50 years, 55 years. And he got the Brown part right, but that wasn't your name. And then I thought, I have an old database from 1984. And I searched that and I knew it was Arizona, and your name leaped out at me. So we reconnected.
That's so funny.
That's and I so actually,
funny.
I emailed the AHNA, which is now, it has a different name, right?
No, it's still American Holistic Nurses Association.
It didn't change like the medical one. No. And then the founder of that, Charlotte, what was her name?
Charlotte McGuire.
Who I didn't know, but she died just last year. So she would have been.
She actually died in like 2014.
Oh, okay.
She's been gone. Charlotte's been gone for many years. She was in Flagstaff and then moved to Colorado and had breast cancer that was quickly metastasized and died of complications. Yeah.
I'm confusing her with Dee Krieger, who I also.
Dee Krieger was Therapeutic Touch, and she recently died. Yeah.
Yeah, it was her death. Because I looked her up too. I thought, I'm gonna get some of these old people before they croak. And
How old?
So I don't even know. Are you pushing 65 or what?
Oh, honey, I wish I was. No, I turned 71 this month.
Oh, well, you're looking pretty darn good.
Thank you. I work at it.
Yeah, well, I was 77 this month. When's your birthday?
January 10th.
I'm the 11th, so another connection.
So we're birthday buddies, fellow Capricorns. Yeah.
6 years apart, but so all of this is some background for our viewers of the good old days of what was going on, mentioning folks. And but I want to now get personal with who you are and why. And let's go back to where you were born, what it was like growing up, your birth order, siblings, what shaped you to become the amazingly creative and useful person that you have become.
Thank you. Well, I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm an only child, and all of the cousins in my family are only children. And I have an only child. And from the time I was really little, my parents had always said, you just wanted to be a nurse. That's all you talked about. I
Uh-huh.
remember one time I wanted to be a hula dancer, but I'm sort of the wrong complexion for that. So um, I just stuck with nursing, and I did candy striping in junior high and high school. Um, and it was always my goal to become an RN. And I never thought I would take it several degrees past that. But I was able to go to university for 2 years in Oshkosh and then transferred to a hospital school of nursing in Madison, Wisconsin. And I graduated 49 years ago
Wow.
from Madison General Hospital School of Nursing. So I'm a diploma graduate. I'm really a dinosaur in our profession. Baccalaureate programs were very new. I had wanted to do that at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, but they were not accredited. So without being in an accredited nursing school, I would not have been able to take boards and become an RN. And so I switched gears and went to a diploma school, passed my board, took my boards, and left for the Philippines.
Wow.
And my husband at that time was in the Air Force. And so my first job was at USAF Hospital, Clark Air Base in the Philippines. And it was a great start because the Air Force nurses were very supportive of new grads. And I remember my head nurse, Lucille Chilton, she was a major, and she would go, "Hey, Wetzel, do you know how to?" And I'd go, "No, Major." And she'd say, "Come with me, you're going to learn." And so she was a great teacher, and really I felt much more confident as a brand new RN after we got back from the Philippines.
When was
I
that?
finished a 71, 72.
Okay, that's before my friend Art Brownstein was a doctor there. But that's how I know of it. And also going back even further to Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
did you ever hear Barbara Palombi?
Do you have a context? The name isn't
Uh,
familiar.
she was taught in a nursing school, and she did the first study of validity and reliability of the wellness inventory. And
Doesn't
I
sound
have thought
familiar.
of
I
her.
know
I've
the
never.
inventory, but I don't know her.
Yeah, I just realized I don't have her on my list. So you've generated another
Notes
person
to
for my
John.
list. So you left the Philippines then after what? How many years?
2 years there, including martial law when Ferdinand Marcos was ousted.
Oh,
That was an
right.
interesting time.
Yeah.
We had to move on base. We had orders to come back to the States, and it was just a matter of staying on base for the last few weeks and staying safe because it was a very violent time in the
Mm.
Philippines.
Oh dear.
And we were in Sacramento, California after that. And then Spokane, Washington,
Now you mentioned
70.
we. Is there a partner at this point?
I was still married at this point. Yeah.
We missed where you got married then.
Oh, 1970.
Okay.
So
So
I was
that was,
married when I was finishing nursing school. Um, and so we went to the PI, came back. We were in Sacramento. And then we moved to Spokane, Washington for a couple of years, mid 70s. And that's where our son was born. And
oh,
then we
what,
went
what
back to
what were you doing
California.
in Sacramento and
In Sacramento, I worked in the NICU, the NICU
uh-huh.
with preemies, and those are the days before artificial surfactant and saving 1,000-gram babies. We couldn't save them back then, but we
Uh-huh.
did a lot of intensive work with preemies. In Spokane, I worked for Shriners Hospital for crippled children, and
Uh-huh.
I was the evening charge nurse and the one who always took my cap off as soon as the administrative staff left.
I forgot those caps.
Oh, I still have mine. I still have it. Um, and then after Christopher was born, we moved back to Fairfield, California, Travis Air Force Base.
Uh-huh. That's right in my neck of the woods. I was just out at Travis
Yeah,
a
yeah.
few months ago trying to get into the museum, but you have to have a pass to get in, and it would take 4 hours to get a pass.
Oh, so they do all the security stuff. I
Yeah.
haven't been back to Fairfield but twice since I moved to Flagstaff. So um, I ended up getting into office nursing when I was in Fairfield, and I really found that I was a much better outpatient nurse than I was a inpatient nurse. And so I ended up working for family practice, and then I spent 17 years with the same group of doctors as their office nurse and then as their nurse practitioner when I finished
And this was
graduate
in
school.
in Fairfield?
Fairfield. That's Fairfield. Yeah.
Uh,
And we
Now,
got divorced in Fairfield. So I raised my son from the age of 2, and he walked with me through finishing my baccalaureate and my master's degree, and somehow still has a pretty good sense of humor about the whole thing.
uh-huh. Now, when was the first inkling of holism rearing its sweet head in your mind?
You know, I was thinking about this last night, and I've always had this interest in ways to help people that let their bodies heal themselves rather than pushing pills or surgery or any other modality. And I didn't even know the name. The word holistic, whether it's a WH or an H alone, for many years. But I started finding information, even in nursing journals, about this thing called holistic nursing. And as I would read the descriptions, I'm going, my God, that's me. And I actually found AHNA with a tiny little ad in the back of the American Journal of Nursing.
Uh-huh.
And I went, wow, that's me. And so I called the number, got a membership application. And that was probably in 87 or 88. But I always had more interest in Oriental medicine and hypnotherapy and energetics, that really I could complement what I was doing allopathically with my patients.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just always sort of who I was, rather than saying, oh, today I'm going to be a holistic nurse.
Uh-huh. And were you able to infiltrate the office where you were nursing?
To a certain degree. I remember one story, it's just great. I was working in an OBGYN office, and we would do endometrial biopsies from time to time. And so I would assist as the office nurse, and the doc would finish up and he'd leave the room, and he would just say, you can get up and leave. Well, a lot of times when you stick an instrument into someone's uterus, you get a vasovagal reaction. And one time I was in the room just finishing up labeling specimens and whatnot, and this gal sat up and got really woozy, and she said, oh, I think I'm going to faint. And I just went over and laid her back down, elevated her feet, got her breathing, and she was fine. But I realized that he had no concept that this could happen. And so I sort of made it my private little rule that I would stay in the room until that patient was up, feeling well, wasn't lightheaded, and just make sure they were okay. And then I realized I was actually doing some energy work on them, just reconnecting crown chakra with root chakra. And that seemed to perk them up very quickly. And I had no idea what I was doing, but it seemed to be the right thing to do at the time. And so finally, after maybe 6 more biopsies, he said, why don't you come out of the room right away? I said, because these ladies can faint and somebody needs to be in there. And he just went, oh, okay. And he never challenged me. He never challenged me one bit. So, but there would be things, just the sense of being present with a patient is such a core value with holistic nursing, of being present, being attentive, looking them in the eye, not being attached to a computer screen or a chart. But just the idea of being present.
This is reminding me back in '77 when Donna Ardell wrote me up in the Prevention magazine, which he had done before we actually opened our center. By the time it came out, we had opened. And I got 1,000 letters, mainly from nurses, a few chiropractors, a very rare, if any, doctors. But all the nurses were saying, how can I convince my doctor to pay attention to wellness? And we weren't doing any treatment. Holism was still a new term. We were aware of it in California, but it was very fringy still in '77. Yes. But it immediately clued me in that it was the nurses and the chiropractors who were out in front of the curve, and naturopaths maybe a few other. There weren't really. There was an acupuncturist in Sausalito, but they weren't many of them yet.
Right.
But my brethren of the allopathic medicine folks were not getting it. So
I
you
don't
were,
think they still are.
yeah. Well, they're actually, according to Bill Manahan,
Oh,
there
yeah.
are a number of programs in medical schools. It's a small percentage, but they are growing. And they
Good.
bring them together every year, a whole group of them for a program that he started. He's just retired from it. So it's still surviving, but not thriving, I would say.
Exactly. Andy Weil has the center at the University of Arizona,
Right.
and that's a very much in demand program. I heard him speak probably 2 years ago, and they were making some inroads with the medical students,
Yeah.
and that's hopeful. Let's hope it spreads.
Yeah. In fact, I'm hoping to interview him soon. A woman I've worked with, also a nurse,
Mm-hmm.
is out there this weekend for a conference with him.
Oh,
And
good.
he's promised to slip the invitation into his hands to get through his
Good.
screen. Um,
Yeah, he has a lot of screening.
yeah.
So yeah, they're doing that. The other thing that I'm really noticing now that I'm a veteran in this field is that, I mean, there's, evidence has its place, but I think the whole medical community, and nursing is involved in this, is so focused now on what does the evidence say that they ignore the person sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
And also the extreme use of tablets and computers in patient care is creating this gulf between patient and provider.
Yeah.
And I really hate that about, seeing my provider and she's got her nose in the computer. And a couple times I've said, look at me, I'm right here. Um, there's a program here in the States called New Amsterdam. Did you ever see it when you were in the
No.
States?
Uh-uh.
It's on NBC. It's on Tuesday nights, and you could probably pull it up online. But
Yeah.
it's about a fictional hospital called New Amsterdam in New York. And the medical director's mantra is, how can I help?
Hmm.
And in this latest episode, he forbids providers from using screens in patient contact, forbids it.
Wow.
And so you see all the angst on the side of the docs, especially in the emergency room. Well, but I need it for consults, and I need it for this, and I need it for that. And he says to them at one point something to the effect of, you need to see your patient. And I thought that
Amen.
was such a brilliant statement. At the end, they got him back. Everybody was in an uproar. But I think it brought attention to this fact that so many providers don't see the person sitting in front of them. All they see is, well, it fits into this box. If it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's a duck. But it might be a goose. You
And
don't know.
that's preceded even the use of tablets. I think
I think so too.
uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
My last nurse practitioner job was in a campus here in Northern Arizona University in the campus health clinic. And we had computers in every room. And yes, they're very, very helpful. But I would get the chief complaint, type it in, and I'd push the screen away and just say, so what about this? What about that? And you have to cultivate a memory to get that all in the chart later, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But still, just making that personal connection, being knee to knee with them, being able to grab a hand or just place a hand on their knee to say, listen, we can do this, is so much more critical to me than writing up all this evidence-based stuff in the plan. According to the American Academy of Family Practice or whatever, we just didn't have time. We had longer visits than most people, but still, when you're seeing, if you're in urgent care and you're seeing 12 patients in a 3-hour block, who's got time to put all that in? You need to deal with the person in front of you. And I really see this happening more and more in the profession. So I'm kind of glad I'm retired.
Yeah. I just had a question for you that went right out of my head. My memory
Maybe it'll
shelves
come
are
back.
overstocked.
I hear that.
I'll come.
The other thing that I've gotten very attuned to that goes along with holism is nutrition. And I just finished a 3-year stint as the co-investigator of a national women's health and chronic disease study. So we're in data analysis now. But that was a fun transition from clinical practice to research, which was very part-time. But we just closed data collection in December. So now we're digging through numbers and spreadsheets to look and see, what did we really find out?
Yeah. And what I was failing to remember is the fact that only about 25% of conventional treatments are evidence-based. It's a very low number, and yet we act like it's 100%.
It's the Holy Grail. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not the Holy Grail. I mean, you still have to, I think that we're breeding out intuition.
Mm-hmm.
That, even though it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it could be a goose. And sometimes you've got to listen to that voice and your inner sense and your knowledge base and your experience to say, this is a goose. I need to look at something else.
Yeah. So when did you saw this little ad for AHNA in 87 or so?
87 or 88, yeah.
What did you do? You applied, and then what happened after that?
I joined. I think it was over a winter. I went to the national conference the next year, and I attended national conferences for probably 15 years. I was a conference chair. I was national treasurer, Southwest regional director, director at large. I spent a lot of time at conferences and meetings with that group, and really felt very supported in my desire to bring more holistic practice into my own practice.
What were the numbers like back in the late 80s, and how did it grow in the 90s?
It's grown substantially. I don't know what the membership is now, but I remember when we hit 3,000 members, we were all like over the moon. But they've done a lot more marketing now, and it's kind of become sort of an exclusive club. And so I'm not really active anymore. I haven't been for maybe the last 8 years.
Yeah, you mentioned in the email it was more degree-oriented, focusing on academics rather than frontline patient care.
Exactly. I really think they've left the patient care nurses in the dust.
Yeah.
I still consider myself a bedside nurse because I like to deal with people one-on-one and figure things out and work with them walking a path, not just saying you got to do this. And so, now the whole board has PhDs, which I never wanted a PhD. And so it's all very academic and based in how much money can we make on holistic nurse certification and, how many initials do you really need after your name? I'd need a fold out business card to put all my initials, everything I've done. But I think they really kind of ignore the bedside, the frontline provider. And as a nurse practitioner, I was walking more in a medical world anyway, and I just didn't find that I felt as supported as I had been earlier in my career with them.
So early on, the focus was on patient care, and when did the shift begin, or did you see it happening, or? Yes,
we saw it happening. Some of the old guard, so to speak, the renegades, of which I'm one, we were all together last summer to celebrate one of our colleagues' 90th birthday. And there were, I think, 12 of us that met in Colorado Springs for a 3-day listen and tell stories about the good old days.
Wow.
I want to say I was living here. I went to Utah. Early 2000s, I started to see a shift. The last conference I went to was in Park City, Utah, because it's drivable for me. And I was just so disappointed. It was all about academics, and there was so much Native American culture that was being reappropriated for their uses. And there just wasn't that connection, that heart connection that we'd all felt in the early years. And after that, I pretty much walked away. The next conference is in Albuquerque, which is easy to get to for me, but I'm not going. I'm done. I have
I
other
thought
things to do.
the same thing happened to the National Wellness Association, and been
Mhm.
around the same period. It
Yeah,
used
there
to
was
be
a
a
big
big,
shift to academics.
yeah. We used to have these amazing, it was like summer camp at the University of Wisconsin
Yes.
Stevens Point. And then they
Yep.
moved it to Minneapolis because they thought people could get there easier on a huge campus with no common spaces, and it just completely shifted.
Yeah.
I heard that AHNA came out of the resistance of the AHMA of taking in nurses. Did I hear that from you, or was that Bill Manahan, or
You might have
that?
heard that from Bill Manahan or Norm Shealy,
Yeah.
because our founder, Charlotte McGuire, and Norm's wife,
Oh yeah.
and I'm missing her name right now. Shorty, was it Shorty Shealy? Well,
It's
anyway, it was
something like that. It's not
something
Shorty.
like,
It's
okay.
yeah.
Well, Charlotte and Norm's wife were very good friends, and Charlotte had gone to AHMA and said, why don't you open this up to the nurses? And I don't remember the exact story, but she basically got turned down. And so Charlotte, being in Telluride, Colorado, started licking stamps on her back porch and sending out mimeographed letters. And 1980, there we were. The first meeting was in Stevens Point, I think
Really?
in 80 or 81. Yeah, because she was connected with the Wellness Institute at some point too. So, but she said, well, we need this for the nurses. So she did it.
I
That was
didn't know of
Charlotte.
that connection. Yeah.
Yeah, it was through Norm Shealy, and I think Norm could probably fill you in on the story a
Yeah.
little bit more.
And I know there was all kinds of political stuff going on with Norm and the original gang, that there was some kind of revolution that we didn't get into in my interview with him. But as is often the case, the founder of an organization gets booted out by the renegades.
Yep. Well, no, Charlotte was really a renegade. In fact, we talked about that when we were all in the Springs, that Charlie was on our side. We were the ones
Yeah.
that would just branch out and do stuff. And even though the rest of the world didn't think we were quite right, but we often were. And so we really were the renegades, and we're the ones that still kind of hold the candle for that heart connection. And
Mm-hmm.
even though I hadn't seen some of these women in 20 years, we just picked up where we left off
Yeah.
and just talked and talked. And Vivian told stories, and we had a ceremony for her 90th birthday. And yeah, it was just the old H&A days. And it was wonderful. It was really a fun birthday party.
Yes. Well, while we were getting set up, you mentioned your connection with Gladys McGarry, who I'll be interviewing next week. And will you
Great.
share that connection?
Gladys's son David is an ophthalmologist here in Flagstaff, and when I saw him many years ago, I reminded him that I was the person that taught his mother how to do the electric slide in Phoenix, Arizona, the year that we had the joint AHNA-AHMA conference. And poor Gladys almost fell off the back of the stage, but we caught her. She didn't go down. And he just sat back and laughed, and he said, I never knew she knew the electric slide. And I said, she did for that night.
Well, and I hadn't heard of it until you explained it to me. It's a what?
It's a country western line dance. Yeah.
Line dance. Okay.
Line dance. Yeah.
Well, I'll
And
ask her
we all
about it next week if
see
she's
if
still
she
doing it.
remembers. Yeah. But we were all duded up in Western garb because you're in Phoenix, Arizona. It's
Yeah.
kind of part of the culture, and did the electric slide as part of a talent show. And Alan Gabby sang some of his songs, and oh, I can't even remember it, but it was a riot. It was
There's a
really
name
a
out of the
great night.
past. Alan Gabby.
Yeah. Where's Alan Gabby these days?
I don't know. I didn't know him that well, but his name would come up. I'll track him down and see if, yeah, he was,
Last I heard, he was at Bastyr University, and I want to say that's Washington State.
it
But
is, yeah. But that's
that's where
the naturopath.
uh-huh.
was he working with Pizzorno there?
I don't know, but there's an Alan Gabby quote in my head from that conference, that joint nurses and physician conference. And I wish I still had the audio tape. I think I have a Walkman somewhere to play a cassette. But Alan said, and these were the days when HMOs were getting very popular.
Yeah.
Not just the Kaiser model, but everybody had an HMO. And Alan looked at this audience during his talk and he said, they just don't understand. You can't manage care.
Yes.
And that has stuck with me all of these years of a very active nursing career. I've always thought about that. You really can't manage care. And this was, of course, when you needed a prior authorization to breathe sometimes, but
Yeah.
any x-ray or medication or treatment or physical therapy or intervention, you had to jump through the hoops to get that service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm impressed that the system here in Australia is much more relaxed. Everyone has Medicare.
Right.
Limited. There are certain things, elective surgeries and so forth you have to pay for, or people have private insurance. But basic care, they can order anything they want. And
Yeah.
I go to a doctor who's younger than my daughter.
Yeah, they're all 12 these days. I don't know what's up with that. Yeah.
He's in his early 40s, but sweet guy, and it's reminiscent in many ways of my dad's practice in Ohio, where he did surgery in the mornings, he fit glasses in the afternoon, he delivered babies at all hours of the day, often on Christmas morning when we were around the Christmas tree, he'd get a call from the hospital.
Hello. Yep.
And, Phyllis Diller was one of his most famous patients. She was a friend of mine.
Oh my gosh.
And one time I have an interview of him that I should put on this about his practice, that he did 16 house calls one day during an epidemic.
Wow.
And office visits were $1, house calls were $2, and he dispensed his own meds, which were far
we did
fewer.
that in the early days too.
Yeah.
We had a medicine cabinet. You need 10 amoxicillin, here they are. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, we've covered some. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the neighborhood I grew up in Milwaukee, our backdoor neighbor was a elderly physician who did exactly the same thing. And he wouldn't charge my dad for a visit unless my dad beat him at cribbage. And so my dad would go over to play cribbage with him, and then, he would talk to Doc about something. And then if he lost, he said, Doc wants me to pay him a bottle of scotch. And they had quite a friendship for many, many years. They played cribbage about 3 nights a week, and it just kept them both off the streets and out of trouble.
What did your dad do? We missed that.
My dad was a traveling salesman, and he sold everything from coffee machines to drapery hardware. He worked a lot with architects to plan window treatments for different buildings, hotels. He did the YMCA in Milwaukee. That was one of his biggest contracts. He was really proud of that. Yeah.
Well, we've covered pretty much the gamut of your life and times.
I do want to just mention the nutrition stuff, though, because I think this is really such a big part of wellness that we forget. And basically, in medical school, you had probably, 20 minutes of human nutrition?
Not even that. Yeah.
So I got involved with this, being a yoga practitioner and being a yoga teacher, I started moving away from animal products kind of naturally. I've been vegetarian most of my adult life, but I started reading more about what's called a whole food plant-based diet, and watched some videos and was very convinced, and went on this program, lost a bunch of weight, got healthier. And I was able to join a team at Northern Arizona University, and we did 5 local studies with employees of the university and the hospital system, and had amazing results that have been published. I think we have 3 papers that have been published. And you really can't be healthy if you don't have a good supply of nutrients and micronutrients. And by and large, people are starting to wake up to the reality that if you get more beans, greens, grains, and colorful vegetables, we have seen reversal of type 2 diabetes. We've seen cholesterol go down 150 points. We've seen CRPs go from in the 40s, which is dangerous, down to nothing. Wow. I had some patients that were in one of the pilot studies, and 4 of them were type 2 diabetics, and 3 of them I got off their medications completely with normal A1Cs. And so I think this is really an area we need to look at. It certainly fits into holism. You are what you eat.
It's huge.
You know, you want to be a Twinkie, be a Twinkie.
Yeah.
And so I was really privileged to be in on all of those studies. And then in 2016, we launched a nationwide women's health study. We had hoped it would go on for 10 years, but our funding source dried up. And so we had to close data collection December 31st of last year. So now we're looking at that, and I think we're going to find some very interesting findings on women who are at risk for breast cancer, who've had breast cancer, who are diabetics. I know of several that came off meds, came off blood pressure meds, got rid of their metabolic syndrome and their PCOS, just all sorts of interesting things. So our first article on that, which is on cohort 1, the original group that registered, will be in the Journal of Lifestyle Medicine through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and it should be out next month.
And what was the intervention? Are they following a specific diet, or what?
Yes, a whole we were working with Dr. Joel Furman, who's a nutritional physician.
Oh yeah.
And his plan is called Nutrient Dense Plant Rich. Mm-hmm. And it involves getting the micronutrients that you need instead of the macronutrients that you need. Everybody learned about proteins, fats, and carbs. That's all we learned.
Yeah.
But we didn't address the fact that there's more vitamins in an apple than you could ever put into a pill. So trying to get people away from supplements that could be harmful. Folic acid has been shown to be carcinogenic in some people. So we really work on getting those essential nutrients through the diet plan and seeing what happens. And so I've been on Joel's plan for several years. I'm a power lifter these days.
Wow.
I deadlift 175 easily.
Wow.
Yeah, I got muscles, babe. I got muscles. And I absolutely love it, but I don't think I could do this on a standard American diet of bacon and eggs. I have an avocado for breakfast when I'm going to go work out, and I'm great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get a lot of greens and beans.
I've been doing intermittent fasting of 36 hours
yes.
a week, which I'm doing today. And avocados are my usual lunch.
Yes.
And I had a little gut hanging down, and I discovered when my shorts that I didn't used to wear a belt with fell off me that I had lost that gut. So
exactly, we lose fat, and most importantly is we lose the visceral fat, the fat that comes with obesity that wraps around the organs and makes them work less effectively. So we have a machine on campus that measures visceral versus central adiposity, and the results are amazing when we see people get on that machine and how much visceral fat they lose. Most of us that have had children have a little belly. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to go away, but it's a lot smaller than it used to be. And I had clothes falling off. I had yoga pants that would fall off in the middle of a pose. So between the yoga and the weightlifting and the diet, I'm ready for another 30 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's your understanding of the whole fat business and Ainsley, what's his name's?
Paleo and, pardon?
I'm trying to think of Ainsley's last name, the one that did made fat bad and switched us all to high carbohydrate diets. And
I'm not familiar with that work precisely, but we do know that oils And processed fats are probably one of the worst food that we can consume because they lead to chronic inflammation. And we're
Yeah.
getting evidence now that this is the root cause of cancer, diabetes, certainly cardiovascular disease, stroke, peripheral vascular disease. All of these things come from an overabundance of fat in our diet.
Well, I think
And
it's oxidized fats and the
it's the
process.
oxidized fat. Yeah. And it's how the body deals with it. And it
Mhm.
deals with a natural fat like an avocado in a much different way than it does with
Yeah.
olive oil or a T-bone for dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any other final words for our viewers down in the ages who we hope this will be around long enough for future generations to get a sense of us after we're gone and what
I think you've made
aspired?
a great start bringing back the historical figures. It's hard to think of myself as a historical figure,
Well,
but no, this is great. It's great to see your face after all of these years. Oh my
likewise.
gosh. I'm still here, just doing my
Yeah.
thing. So, no, this was really fun. And, I think we really have to look at healthcare with a different lens these days, to see it in less as an intervention and more as support. And that's
Yeah.
sort of always been my take, is that healthcare is here to help you when you need it, but we can do so much more for self-care if we just take the time and learn what we need to learn and then do it. You
Yeah.
got to have the motivation. Yeah.
Did you know of Tom Ferguson back when he started Medical Self-Care magazine in the 70s? Was that before your time?
Yeah. Oh man, I haven't thought about that in years. Yes.
Yeah, he was just on the other side of Mount Tamalpais from me in Mill Valley. And in fact, he was instrumental in getting us on 60 Minutes and got me into the Student Medical Association
Good.
connections. And then he had to up and die on us. He checked out early. So
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah.
sweet man. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Wendy. And,
You are so welcome, Jack. It's good to talk to you. Regards to your family.
okay. Same to you.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Mm-hmm.